Are you an entertainer or an artist abroad looking to work in the United States? I'm here today with Steve Maggi, and we'll be talking about some of the things you should keep in mind to do so legally and avoid future problems. Steve, what are some of the things that an entertainer, an actor, a producer, a singer-songwriter should keep in mind before coming to the United States?
Well, if they want to work in the US, they can't be their typical spontaneous selves. They have to be very measured and cautious and make sure that they're getting the right documents together, they're getting the right kind of sponsorship, and that they're procuring the correct visa for whatever their endeavor is. And that could include even just one performance in the US. Even if that performance is not paid, but there's a paying audience, they need a visa.
Got it. So if someone is performing at a charity concert where there will be price of admission to raise money for the charity, and maybe the organization is paying for their flight or paying for a few meals, that still constitutes working in the United States, Steve, even though the performer isn't getting paid directly for their performance?
Yeah, I believe I actually read a case that a cup of coffee could be construed as a form of payment. And anything that's construed as a form of payment means that they are required to be authorized to work. So even a charity function, because a charity function will have a paying audience. But assuming that that wasn't the case and nobody paid, which would not be a very good charity event for fundraising, if they got a cup of coffee or a free flight or a hotel room, that would be considered a form of payment and they would need a visa. And that means they have to go through the entire laborious process of applying for a visa, which can take several months. So planning is most important here, and weighing the cost benefit of the upfront cost of having to go through an attorney and pay fees to apply for your visa, and what it means for your career, really long term. A lot of times it's a platform for artists to play bigger gigs and to get more notoriety and build a strong case for future visas as well.
What do you say to those people that say, look, I'm going to go there on a travel visa, I'm going to work a couple of days on this film, I'm not even getting paid scale, what's the big deal?
I think that number one, they should try to see if the sponsoring company or production company will foot the bill. Immigration Service prefers that. I mean, there's no hard and fast rules, but really if they can get that covered, even if they're compensated very little in terms of what they're actually doing, that obviously helps a lot. But I think the most important thing is to weigh what that will do for their resume to get future sponsorship or to be able to work anywhere worldwide. If you've made it in New York, as they say, you can make it anywhere, right?
So what are the consequences of working here, performing here without a proper visa?
Well, it could mean that you might not be able to work in the US again. So you have to be very careful.
Wow, that's pretty drastic.
Absolutely.
You can be banned for life for not securing a visa?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you get denied one day, what happens is eventually it will come to the forefront when an immigration officer does a Google search and they Google your name and they found out that you worked on X project, or if you're you're somebody working in the background, it's going to be on your IMDb profile, for example, if you're a lighting director. Every piece of professional credit you get is going to be on the internet. And so that will come out, and then if an adjudicator is adept enough and they're really invested in trying to find a reason to deny, they will Google you and they will search on those sites, and they will see that you have a credit from St. Louis, Missouri for X independent film project, and that's a red flag.
So whether you're a director of photography, a director, an actor, a screenwriter, if you're going to work in the United States, get the right visa.
Absolutely. The good news is the O1 visa or the P1 visa, they encompass almost any artistic endeavor. And so if you're recognized in your field and you can show the proper proof like media coverage, articles about you, expert letters, you should be able to qualify. We've even gotten visas approved for production assistants that had the right paperwork, the right backing, but they have to do it the right way.
Entertainers watching this, representatives, managers, agents of entertainers, what should they consider when choosing the right immigration lawyer to secure a visa for the talent?
I think it's an attorney that's going to tell them all the things that they should do correctly and that they shouldn't, that they should avoid, right? What are all the roadblocks? What are the obstacles that you can create that will lead to denial? And that means that you need serious collaboration and commitment from all parties involved, the agent, the sponsoring company or individual, and the artist. to procure all those documents that are necessary, because the US government does not give away these visas. And because so many artists come to the US and will perform under the radar, or they think they are, without a proper visa, Immigration Service is on the lookout for anyone that's not doing it exactly by the letter. And so they have to be very careful to make sure they're presenting a very thorough petition. And an immigration lawyer who's good will also be able to say, this is why you don't qualify. They'll look at all the requirements, they'll create a roadmap for their client, and they'll say, you qualify, in my opinion, in 2 of these categories, but not 3. And so you need to do X, Y, or Z in order to potentially qualify, to make sure you're submitting a case that will be approved.
Steve, our law firm represents a lot of creative businesses and creative professionals. What do you love about representing creatives?
Well, I'm the son of 2 artists. And so I understand the mentality of the creative mind. And my job is to bring together the right and left hemispheres of the brain to work together and collaborate, which means I'm very meticulous in how I set up the cases and how I present them. And so sometimes it's a tug of war. And so it's never boring to work with creatives, but they have to play by immigration's rules. And if you're an attorney that is on top of the new tendencies and what immigration is looking for and how that keeps evolving, and you change your strategies and you change the way that you present cases based on that, then what you need from a creative client is somebody who will collaborate with you and roll with those changes and give you the documents that you need. Because it doesn't make sense to apply until you know you have the strongest case possible. Even if you might miss X or Y gig next week or next month, you need to think about your future.
Steve, I know that your mother was a prolific artist and that you yourself spent quite a bit of time living abroad in South America. Mm-hmm. What perspective does that bring in the way you approach the practice of law, and particularly representing creatives?
Well, I think I have a more insight, into how creatives think. And it's challenging to get them to think in a very linear way, but that's how the law needs to be presented. So sometimes it is a square peg and a round hole, and you have to make those things coalesce. And so understanding that mentality, and also having lived abroad and understanding that things work very differently in the US than they do in every country. The individuals that you work with, you have to understand their culture and to understand what their way of thinking is. On top of being a creative, there are also cultural aspects, and funnel those into a very strategized and meticulous petition that's made to conform to how a US immigration officer wants to see it. Why does this provide a benefit to the United States? That's always the question behind it. If it's economic or cultural, you have to show that this person will make an impact. You can only do that by thoroughly understanding what they've done, what their body of work is, what their ethos is, and to communicate that visually and through your written word so you can meet the requirements and make sure that you're matching it to what an official is wanting to see so they can justify an approval of the case.
Steve, let's talk a little bit about lead time. A foreign athlete, an entertainment professional, an artist, how much time do they need to prepare for that visa application? When's a good time to come to you? And what are some of the considerations that go into making a successful visa application for a creative or an athlete?
Dominic, I would say that of all the visa types that I work on, the athlete and entertainer visas are the ones that require the most lead time.
Really? More so than a business owner or a professional?
Yeah, because for example, you have a delay in the launch or the scaling of your business in the US. You can probably go an extra few months and then still open your business and be successful because you're building a very solid platform. But if you're an athlete or entertainer, you have a specific date that you need to be in X place to perform or to compete. And so you need to make sure that you have that visa in hand. And if you're improvising and you're doing it at the last minute, there is a very good chance that Murphy's Law will apply and there will be a hiccup somewhere and you won't be able to get to where you're supposed to be to perform. And that creates, as you know, a domino effect because it affects the people who are producing, the hosts of the event. It leads to canceled events sometimes. And so you need to make sure that you're planning well in advance.
I think you might agree that a good carpenter measures twice and cuts once. What is the equivalent when it comes to immigration law and securing visas for athletes or entertainment professionals?
I think the measuring is the strategy and then the implementation. So I think that you really are measuring twice, because first you need to make sure that the strategy is solidly in place, and that really changes, just like carpentry, on each piece of wood that you're carving. It's not some sort of template that you put together and you just do an assembly line. A carpenter does specific, intricate work, and that involves a strategy for each case. And the second part is then taking the time to implement that and to create the best case that you can create to maximize your chance of success. Because the cutting part is your petition, and you do not want to get denied. You only want to cut that piece of wood one time, and that means a successful approved case.
Otherwise, you'll miss your competition date or performance date. Where does the experience fit in these applications? As I understand it, when you're making a visa application, you're making an argument to the examiner that this person deserves admission or permission to work in the US. What goes into that thought process?
I think first of all, you have to know the law inside out, to the point where you can feel it and you know whether you're on the right path or not. You also need to stay on top of tendencies, because the way the law is applied is changing depending on which embassy or consulate or what year it is or which service center within the United States is processing the case. You need to know how they're reviewing these cases, because they are all separate. They're all different. It's not civil code, like a lot of our clients come from civil code countries and it's black or white. That's not how the American law works. It's about interpretation. And that is always evolving depending on who's in the presidential seat and who's in Congress, what the politics are. It's always evolving. And so they need to be on top of those changes as well.
Steve, thank you for being here today. This was very informative. I learned a little bit more about immigration law, business immigration, immigration for entertainment, and I really appreciate you being here. Thanks
It's a pleasure.
for joining us.
Thank you so much, Dominic.
Now, some of the people watching, if they want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
They can go to our website, which is www.smalawyers.com, or they can just email me at smaggi, smaggi@smalawyers.com.
And Steve, if someone has an immediate need or question, can they call you?
Absolutely. My number is 917-657-1132.
Steve Maggi, very experienced immigration lawyer, business owners, entrepreneurs, athletes, and entertainers.
Thank you, Dominic.
Thank you, Steve.